My name is Tony Riggs. I'm a senior applications engineer here at GoEngineer. So as an applications engineer, we study and learn the different products that we carry, and one of the ones is Composer. So we're going to take a look at some Composer options. Um, in particular, the webinar here is Advanced Composer Options on Animation. So hopefully some of you are using Composer to create screenshots for technical publications or animations for presentations and documentations, and maybe even putting some of that content on the web or publishing it for interactive content. But we're going to look at some of the tools here in um, in Composer and see what we can do with them. So just a little bit about Composer. What can it let us do? There's several purposes for adding Composer to your set of design tools. You can definitely start the publication efforts before the final design is actually finished. This can help speed up the overall process so you're not, like I said, not taking pictures as the equipment leaves on the truck. Uh, some other than designers and engineers creating the content, knowledge of how the components go together can allow someone more creative than, well, some engineers, at least I am, aren't very creative with what we can do. But let's let somebody else more creative, create our content for us. And then you can create, some content that's above and beyond what you can do in SOLIDWORKS alone. And, some more interactive and more clear, content. So there's a couple things we're going to take a look at in the webinar here. Um, and this is kind of in the getting started area. We're going to look at some selection sets and where that can be useful. A couple years ago, SOLIDWORKS actually borrowed that um, for the core product. So we'll see what we can do. Now the weird thing about watching other people use SOLIDWORKS Composer, that typically people find a favorite way to do things and stick to that way. And, hey, that works great, but sometimes there may be an easier way to do things. So I'm going to show what I'm going to call some advanced topics here, but some may be basic for others. So don't just stop with this webinar. Go out and look on the web for other people's Composer examples. Um, there's a bunch of different examples out there, and a lot of times you'll get that, hey, I would have never done it that way, when you see somebody else presenting something in Composer, and that may give you some different ideas on what to do. So I'm going to switch on over to Composer real quick. And this is just a pretty generic little picture of a model of a valve, and we're going to use that for some of our presentation today. So getting started, I'm going to come in and create a couple of views, and I like to come in and maybe rename the views a little bit, so that'll help us out in the future. And I'm going to come in and maybe use the transform tool to come in and move some of the components. We'll say, pull the nut off, and I'm going to create a view, and we'll say remove nut. Come in and grab the handle, pull that up. Another snapshot. Remove the knob. And we're just keeping track of these views. We're going to maybe use these in the instruction manual for assembling and disassembling this component. So far nothing crazy. I want to come in and pull all 4 of these bolts loose. Now I can definitely control select them from the screen. I can come over from the assembly toolbar here, and I can control select all of them over here as well and pull them up. But one of the things that's nice here is if we're going to be selecting multiple components over and over again, this little icon here to create a selection set is actually going to come in, and we'll say call that the bolts. So now next time if I want to just come in and select just the one icon there, it's going to grab all 4 of those components and I can move those up all together. You know, we don't have to go through and control select and rotate around and mess up our viewpoint or anything. We can do it right from the assembly toolbar and the selection sets. So the idea of selection sets can be very, very helpful. So let me add another view there. We'll call that remove bolts. Okay. So again, I'm just going through, creating the different views here and kind of working our way through things. If we look back at the PowerPoint, let's go to here. Animations from views. There's a couple different ways to create animations. Like it says there, we're just going to drag and drop them from the views we've already created. So if nobody's has done this before, it's pretty easy. I'm going to switch over to another file here. It's got the really the same same views. We're just going to drag and drop those onto the timeline down here. And so the cover page, and then remove the nut, remove the handle, remove the bolts, and then hide some of the components. So if we've already got the views created, this can be kind of nice. So we'll go through and play this. The nut moves up, the handle, everything disappears. It even gives us little markers here that match the names of our views. Cover page, remove nut, remove handle, remove bolts. So it's very handy to pull those into an animation. But sometimes we might want to, play with things a little bit more. So we'll go back to a lovely PowerPoint. So that the timeline can really be confusing if you let it be. There's some tools that we're going to look at with filters, and then the effects tools that can really help out a lot. We had a composer presentation, years and years ago, and we were having a guest speaker come in, and he, had created this, amazing presentation, and we did a quick little composer demo before he got up and spoke. And he got up and said, thanks for having me out, but the presentation you just gave, it really is going to mess me up. The first thing he did, to create his animation, it took him like 2 weeks. And then somebody wanted some changes, so he started over and redid it. And he could do it in a week. And then he, some more changes, and he could do it in 3 days and a day. And then he got down to a couple hours to recreate this pretty amazing animation. And the fact that we showed him some of the filters was going to make it where he could have actually gone back and edited the animation and not had to recreate it every time. So if we look at the timeline down here, we've got location keys, property keys, viewport, camera, and digger keys. So as we're doing different things, there could actually be multiple things happening under each of these keys. We've got the views changing. We've got multiple components that are going in and becoming transparent. Let's say maybe I don't want, say, this bolt to disappear. I want to leave one of the bolts out there. I gotta find out through the keys, how to get rid of that guy. If I select on the component, I can actually come down here and use the filters. So this is show keys for the selected actors only. And then I've got show keys for the properties only. But it's basically only showing me the information. There's location information and then properties. And one of the properties is the opacity, or the hiding and showing of the component. So what I can do is, I've got, this key here where that bolt is, opaque, we can see it. And then out here, we've got it disappearing. So if I come in here, I can right click on this key and I'll delete that key. Okay, if we come back over and let's just play the last bit of that animation. Now everything else disappears except for that one key. If we don't have the filters turned on and we move one of the keys or delete the keys, it's really everything underneath there. There could be, 5 or 10, 100, whatever many things going on under that key um, that we don't want to mess up. So using the filters to help with that can be pretty handy. So if we come back, we can play that animation one more time. The nut, the handle, the bolt, and then we're leaving one of the bolts laying in there. Another thing that we can do is sometimes in the views we'll have labels, and that can be handy. Getting them to show up in the animation, and work is pretty easy. But let's go ahead and we'll move the timeline over here a little bit. And we'll go to the author tab and we're going to come in and put a label on, say, this component. Okay. So if we take a look at what's happened here in the timeline, notice that as we're going along the timeline, that label doesn't show up until a little bit before we place it in there. What it's actually done is actually added a key here at 4.7 seconds or so of the key property of it being where the opacity was turned down, and then we're going in and then it's fully visible. So there's a real nice way to have that key, have that label show up. What we can do, we can also come in and we could copy one of these labels, control drag it, and that will leave it visible from there. We could control drag maybe another copy on out there, and maybe have that label disappear. And that's an easy way of using what we've already got, just control dragging and copying that key. But let's not do that. Let's right click and delete the keys, and we'll do it a little bit differently. So we'll leave that label showing for a little bit. We'll come in and select on the label again, and from the effects drop down, we've got some nice tools that are set up here for us where we can fade things in and out. Now we want to make sure we leave enough, let's delete that one more time. We want to leave enough room for this to happen. So if we do a fade out, it's actually going to come in and, just like we did manually, copy another key where, hey, that label is visible, and then go back in and fade it away. So using the effects tools can really be handy for making components disappear. If we move on out here, we could take an entire component and fade it out as well. So it's not just for labels. Okay, so let's go back to the PowerPoint. And there's something that I wonder how many people have actually seen or played with. It's called the animation library. There's several common tasks that it can help us out with. We just need to play around with it and see how it works. So let's see how it does work. I'm going to go back in and I'm going to close out of that one that we've already done, and maybe close out of that one. We're going to reopen it from scratch. So I like the recent document list over here. We're going to open up the globe valve, and we're going to play with this animation library. So what does this do and where is it located? Well, from the Workshops tab, we've got Animation Library, and there are a couple different, let's say, categories or groups listed here. We've got the highlight group, and the motion group. So in highlighting, we can enhance, focus, validate, warning. There's a couple things that are listed there. If we look through the motion group, and this is maybe what I would use the most, we've got the ability to install, remove, roll, screw, unscrew, and untighten. So what all things can we do here? So a lot of times if we wanted to remove a bolt, when I did it earlier, I just grabbed them and pulled them, stripped out the threads nicely, but we may want to actually have them, spin and rotate as we unscrew them. So maybe we'll use the unscrew option. Now, if we look at this, there's kind of an overview down here at the bottom. It's going to flash for a little bit, it's going to rotate, and it's going to translate. So it's only going to rotate for a little bit, and once it gets unthreaded, then we can pull it straight on out. So the overview there is nice. We can actually kind of change the timeline here. And just looking at the properties here, the start time is 0 in time per second. So it's going to flash red for a second. It's going to flash 3 times. Then it's going to rotate for a certain distance, and it's going to move a certain distance. Okay. So if we don't want the part to flash and draw attention to it, we can change the start and end time, change the end time to 0, and it won't do anything. For the rotate, it's already picked kind of a default axis, X, Y, or Z. So if we're familiar with what axis this is moving in, we've got the Y axis is normal to Y. But let's see what else we can do. Well, there's a little a button here for picking. I'll zoom in a little bit on this this bolt head, and I'm going to pick that face. So that's going to kind of pick the direction of the rotation, and then I'm going to rotate around, and I'm going to pick the direction for the translation. So I'm going to come to the bottom face here because I want it to go up. Now, if I can't actually access that face, I could go ahead and pick the top face here, and then I would just need to come in and change the sign on the y-axis, maybe make it a -1, and it would go up. So we can come in and create that, and once we hit the create button, help if I pick the component. We can say create. And let's play through that animation. Play button. So it flashes and unscrews for a little bit. And moves down. There's the unscrewing portion. So once it gets out, it can just translate on up. And it's going to flash a couple times there at the beginning. So it's actually added this unscrew, key to our timeline. The nice thing about this is we can come in and select on this guy. We can maybe make some changes. Maybe we don't want the color to be red, or we don't want it to happen at all. We can change the end time, number of flashes, and we can actually update the unscrewing. So it's like a library feature inside SOLIDWORKS. You can come in and be able to change these values as we go. Now, one thing I've seen, if I want to come in and create a new step, I'm going to move just a little bit past the end of this guy. I can come in and pick on another component, choose the category and the animation, and start again. But it seems to like the little gap there in between the two library features that we're adding on there. Okay. So again, we can come back to the unscrew. We can move that as one single chunk and rearrange things. And we can also come in to the overview and change the values here. So we want it to start rotating as it's flashing. You can see the numbers on the screen in the animation library actually changing as well. Okay. So there's a couple things that we can do with that animation library. There's a couple other things that I want to look at while we're maybe talking about this one bolt. I've moved this guy, you know, maybe I want to reverse the process and um, move him back around. So if I select on the component, I can set another location key just to say, hey, there he is there. Go down the line in the timeline, and in the transform tool, this restore neutral position. I don't want to just grab that and actually move it down because I didn't see how far I moved it, but the neutral position is going to be that starting position, and set another location key for that component there. So back up to the beginning, play it, flashes, unscrews, pulls out, and then we're just gonna shove it right back down through the hole and put it back together. That way we don't need to really know how far we've moved it. The other thing we could have done, we could have grabbed the position key from an earlier time and copied it down the timeline to show where that component was at some other time. So copying keys, I've seen cases where we rotate around to do something, and the camera picks up some of that movement. So I've seen people go in and wipe out camera keys to keep the view from moving around, or you can always go in and if you explode something too far, it's off the screen. Just go reset the camera key at that particular timeline, and it'll overwrite the one that's there. There's another thing I wanted to look at when it comes to some of the advanced things, and this may be just something that helps us think outside the box a little bit. There's these actions and links that are there. There's a number of different links that are available. Seen these listed in the training manual and through some of the help commands. So there's links to open a file, go to a specific website, FTP site, go to a specific view, play a previous animation. There's next markers, first markers. Remember, the markers are there for when we drug the views in. It puts that little marker. You actually can create a marker of your own at any point in time. So it's almost like a DVD you're playing. Hey, I want to jump to the next scene, or back and forth, and you can make buttons that have different controls to them, or you can actually make anything you click on have some of these controls. So let's take a look at how that might work. I've got this animation here. If we look at the button there, it actually has an action down here to go to this link event, to go to the previous you say marker. We've also got the ability to do the same thing with components. I did that to one of the components here in the starting animation. So if I click on this valve body, I've got it where it will go to a specific file. I've got a JPEG image out there on my hard drive that I'm going to launch. So let's kind of see how that works. Obviously clicking on it from the screen doesn't do anything, but right now we're in design mode, so we can kind of go back to actually see what happens when we play the animation and everything. So if I click on that component, boom, that picture is going to pop up. So let's think about some of the options that we listed there, on the PowerPoint. Opening a file, I showed that. Going to a website, hey, you click on this, it goes to the website to, hey, let's order that component. Going to a specific view, that one's kind of interesting. If we have, a view set up in Composer, and maybe I'm dealing with this entire valve body. If I click on that component, maybe it switches to a view that's got everything else hidden, and I can kind of zoom in on that view. So it definitely makes it interactive back and forth. Once we go to that view, it might be nice to have something else that also jumps it's like a back button. It lets us go home, go back to one of the views that shows um, the entire assembly. So we can go to a view that has a bill of material or exploded view. We could have text out here that is almost like play step one, play step two, that type of thing, and bounce back and forth, and not have to go um, linearly in the timeline when we're playing the animation. Okay, so there's some very interesting things that we can do with those tools. Okay, there's another couple things I wanted to talk about again, just with the examples and things. I'm going to pull this website over here. It's 3dmojo.com. It actually deals with the CATIA version of Composer. There's actually, all kinds of different videos and things out here. Some of them may only apply to the CATIA version of Composer, but there's actually a video here on the animation library that walks through some of the same things. 3D tool library and different things. So, go to YouTube, 3dmojo.com. We've got videos on our website and our YouTube channel that can be handy as well, just to give us some other examples of things to work with. Okay. Got one more little slide here to go over real quick, and I had this at the beginning at first, but I'm going to go ahead and show it anyway. Getting started, opening up the SOLIDWORKS models inside Composer, we can do that. Exporting from SOLIDWORKS, it kind of depends on whether you want people to have access to the models or if you want to be in control of giving them the Composer files to start with. So, going out to the SOLIDWORKS website, the Composer Player add-in, and then here in SOLIDWORKS, where we can turn the add-in on for SOLIDWORKS Composer. Well, what does that allow us to do? It allows us to do a file save as a SOLIDWORKS SMG file, SOLIDWORKS Composer SMG file directly out of SOLIDWORKS. And that way we don't have to open up, Composer and open up the SOLIDWORKS files natively. So it's just another one of those things that I've seen people, not be as familiar with. Maybe one of the basic things that everybody knows, but hopefully there's somebody out there that didn't know about doing that option. That's the whole, like I said, the whole thing about Composer. Some of the stuff you may be in a rut is probably not the exact best terminology, but you may find a favorite way that you like to do things, and you'll typically stick with that way. So think outside the box sometimes, and have fun with Composer. So that's kind of the end of the presentation for today. It's a nice quick 30-minute presentation. So again, GoEngineer provides design and manufacturing tools with expertise that enables customers to reduce the cost, risk, and time required to go live. And I like to say, and have fun with new technologies and ultimate new product introductions. My name is Tony Riggs. Email there, triggs@goengineer.com. We've got, again, tons of YouTube videos on youtube.com/goengineer. Well, again, my name is Tony Riggs. Thanks for joining us on this webinar, and this will be posted out on the website, in a few days. But go out and watch some of the other videos that we've got out there as well. So have a great Thursday. Take care, guys.